Listen carefully. What I'm about to reveal is something most people were never taught. God does not just bless effort. He blesses direction in silence. When you focus on your goals and stay quiet, something powerful begins to work in your favor. Silence is not empty. It is strategy. It protects what God is building in you. And most people lose their future, not by failing, but by talking too much too soon. There is a hidden war happening around your goals. And most people lose it before they even begin. Not because they are weak, not because they are unqualified, but because they reveal too much too early. Listen closely. Every goal you speak too soon enters a battlefield it was not ready for. Not everyone who hears you is assigned to support you. Some are assigned to slow you down. Silence is not secrecy. Silence is protection. God never told you to hide your purpose because it is small. He told you to guard it because it is valuable. There is something spiritual about unfinished things. When a seed is planted underground, nobody applauds it. Nobody celebrates it. Nobody even sees it. But that is exactly where its strength is forming. And this is where most people make a costly mistake. They speak like the seed is already a tree. They announce what God has only just begun. They expose what is still fragile. They invite opinions into something that still needs formation. And once opinions enter, pressure enters, doubt enters, comparison enters. Suddenly what was pure becomes heavy. Pay attention now. Not every silence is weakness. Some silence is warfare. Because in silence your focus becomes sharper. Your discipline becomes stronger. Your clarity becomes undeniable. When you stop explaining your goals to people, something shifts inside you. You stop performing. You start building. You stop seeking approval. You start seeking execution. And this is where transformation begins. God is not just interested in your dream. He is interested in your endurance. Can you stay faithful to something nobody claps for yet? Can you keep building when nobody understands what you are building? Can you resist the urge to announce what is not yet finished? This is where destiny is separated from distraction, because distraction always wants attention, but destiny often requires silence. There are things God will only release into your life after you learn restraint. Not restraint from action, but restraint from exposure. Not everything sacred is meant to be spoken early. Some things grow stronger when they are protected from external noise. Think about this deeply. The more you talk about your goals prematurely, the more you scatter your energy. Every time you explain your vision to the wrong listener, you lose a piece of your focus. Not because they stole it, but because you gave it away. Focus is not just concentration. It is containment. It is the ability to hold your direction without leaking it into the wrong environments. And silence becomes your container. In silence, your mind stops negotiating with outside opinions. In silence, your vision stops being edited by fear. In silence, your purpose stops being diluted by misunderstanding. There is a reason God often moves in quiet seasons, because silence removes interference. You hear Him clearer. You see yourself clearer. You move cleaner. And suddenly your goals stop being emotional wishes and start becoming structured obedience. But understand this carefully. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is preparation. You are not hiding from the world. You are building something the world is not ready to interrupt. And in that hidden place, something powerful happens. Your identity begins to align with your assignment. You stop saying, "I hope I can." You start realizing, "This is who I am becoming." And once identity shifts, behavior follows. This is why God will sometimes isolate your vision before He expands your life. Because expansion without discipline leads to destruction. But silence produces discipline, and discipline produces dominion. So hear this clearly. The reason God said focus on your goals and stay silent is not to limit you. It is to multiply you in secret. Because what grows in silence cannot be easily stolen, shaken, or stopped. It becomes rooted. And anything rooted eventually rises. There is a deeper level to silence that most people never reach. It is not just protection. It is power formation. Because silence does something inside you that noise can never do. It forces confrontation. When you stop talking about your goals, you are left alone with them. And that is where truth begins to surface. Not motivation, not imagination. Truth. Can you really do what you said you will do? Can you still believe it when nobody is clapping? Can you still move when nobody is watching? These are the questions silence asks you. And most people escape this stage. They rush to speak again. They rush to explain again. They rush to seek validation again. Because silence feels uncomfortable. But listen carefully, that discomfort is not your enemy. It is your refinement. In silence, excuses lose their audience. And when excuses lose their audience, discipline becomes unavoidable. You start noticing patterns in yourself you ignored before. Procrastination becomes louder in silence. Fear becomes clearer in silence. Doubt stops hiding in silence. And that is not punishment. That is exposure. God does not reveal weakness to shame you. He reveals it to strengthen you. Because what you cannot confront, you cannot change. So silence becomes a mirror. And many people do not like mirrors that speak truth. They prefer environments where noise hides their inconsistency. But growth does not happen in distraction. Growth happens in awareness. And awareness deepens in silence. Now listen closely. When God told you to focus on your goals and stay silent, He was not just protecting your vision from others. He was revealing your alignment to yourself. Because you cannot build what you refuse to become. You may want the result, but silence exposes whether you are becoming the type of person who can carry it. This is why silence feels heavy at first. It removes the comfort of talking without doing. It removes the illusion of progress without execution. And suddenly you are alone with your habits, your consistency, your discipline, your real direction. And this is where transformation begins. Because in silence you stop performing identity and start building identity. There is a difference between saying I am focused and actually becoming focused. One is spoken, the other is lived, and silence forces the second one. Pay attention now. Every great shift in life begins with withdrawal from noise, not permanent isolation, but strategic separation. Because clarity does not come from more opinions. Clarity comes from fewer distractions. When you remove unnecessary voices, your inner voice becomes louder. And that inner voice is where direction lives. But most people are afraid of that voice because it tells them the truth. It tells them where they are inconsistent. It tells them where they are delaying. It tells them where they are pretending. And instead of listening, they go back to noise. But you cannot hear what you refuse to hear. Silence forces honesty, and honesty builds progress. There is a level of focus that only appears when talking stops competing with doing. You begin to realize something powerful. You don't need more ideas. You need execution. You don't need more opinions. You need alignment. You don't need more approval. You need movement. And silence removes everything that is not movement. Now understand this deeply. God does not waste silence on people who are not assigned to build. He uses silence to train builders, because builders must learn to work without applause. They must learn to stay steady without feedback. They must learn to trust process over perception. And this is where most people break, not in failure, but in hidden preparation. Because preparation does not feel powerful, but it is. In silence, God is not withholding progress. He is developing endurance. Because what He is preparing you for will require stability, not excitement. So silence becomes a training ground, a place where your focus is purified, a place where your discipline is tested, a place where your identity is strengthened without distraction. And when you pass this stage, something shifts. You stop needing to announce your direction, because your direction becomes obvious in your actions. You stop explaining your goals, because your results begin to speak. You stop seeking validation, because you are already aligned. This is the hidden power of silence. It does not just hide you, it builds you. There is a moment in every journey where silence becomes uncomfortable, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening inside you. This is where most people misread their season. They think silence means delay, but silence is often acceleration in disguise. Because while nothing is being said, something is being built. And what is being built is not just your goal, it is your capacity. Pay attention now. Goals do not fail because they are too big. They fail because the person carrying them is not yet stable enough to hold them. And silence is where stability is formed. When you remove the noise of telling people what you will do, you begin to feel the weight of what you must actually do. And that weight changes you. You stop imagining success as a moment. You start understanding it as a process. You stop romanticizing outcomes. You start respecting discipline. This is where maturity is born. In silence, God is not just guarding your vision from others. He is guarding your formation from distraction, because distraction is not always evil. Sometimes it is simply premature exposure. Speaking too soon makes you live in the illusion of arrival, but silence forces you into construction, and construction is slow. Construction is repetitive. Construction is unglamorous, but construction is real. Now listen closely. There is a hidden tension that appears in silence. You start feeling like nothing is happening, but that feeling is a deception, because silence is not absence of movement. It is absence of visibility, and those are not the same thing. Under the surface, discipline is being reinforced. Habits are being restructured. Thinking patterns are being rewritten, and you cannot see it, but you can feel it. That resistance you feel in silence is not punishment, it is transition. God is moving you from emotional effort to structural discipline, because emotional effort talks loudly, but structural discipline builds quietly, and only one of them lasts. This is why God says focus on your goals and stay silent, because focus without silence becomes scattered energy, and scattered energy cannot build anything stable. But focus with silence becomes concentrated power, and concentrated power becomes transformation. Now hear this deeply. There is a version of you that only emerges when no one is watching. Not the version you present, not the version you explain, not the version you defend, but the version you actually are when there is no audience. And silence reveals that version. It strips away performance. It removes excuses that depend on external feedback. It confronts you with one simple reality. Will you still move if nobody knows you are moving? Will you still build if nobody acknowledges what you are building? Will you still stay committed when there is no emotional reward? This is where real identity is formed, because identity is not what you say. Identity is what you repeat when no one is validating you. And silence forces repetition. The same habits, the same discipline, the same choices, day after day, without applause, without recognition, without distraction. And slowly, something shifts. You stop needing motivation, because discipline replaces emotion. You stop chasing inspiration, because consistency becomes your fuel. You stop waiting to feel ready, because readiness becomes irrelevant. You simply execute. And in that execution, your confidence begins to stabilize. Not confidence based on talk, but confidence based on evidence. Evidence that you are becoming what you said you would become. Now understand this carefully. God is not silent because he is absent. He is silent because he is aligning you. And alignment requires stillness. Because if you move too early, you miss formation. If you speak too early, you distort timing. If you expose too early, you weaken process. But silence keeps everything intact. It keeps your focus undivided. It keeps your energy contained. It keeps your direction pure. And purity produces strength. So when you feel the pressure of silence, do not interpret it as abandonment. Interpret it as construction. Something in you is being built that cannot be rushed. Something in you is being stabilized that cannot be announced. Something in you is being prepared that cannot be exposed yet. And when it is ready, it will not need explanation. It will only need expression. There is a level of silence that does not just protect your goals, it multiplies your clarity. And clarity is what most people are missing. Not opportunity, not talent, not even resources. Clarity. Because when clarity is missing, even progress feels like confusion. Pay attention. Now, the more you talk about what you want to do, the more you invite external interpretation into something that is still forming. And interpretation always distorts purity. People will add their fear to your vision. They will add their limitations to your dream. They will add their past failures to your future direction. And suddenly, what God gave you in clarity becomes diluted in conversation. But silence restores original vision. In silence, you stop seeing your goal through other people's opinions. You begin to see it as it is, unedited, undiluted, uncontaminated. And that changes everything. Because now you are not building a shared imagination. You are building a divine instruction. Listen carefully. Confusion does not come from lack of intelligence. Confusion comes from excess noise. Too many voices, too many opinions, too many emotional reactions, and all of them competing for authority over your direction. But silence removes competition. It puts your mind back into one channel, one voice, one direction, one focus, and suddenly decisions become easier. Not because life became simpler, but because distraction disappeared. Now understand this deeply. God does not speak louder in chaos. He speaks clearer in stillness. And stillness is what silence produces. When you stop explaining your goals, you stop fragmenting your focus. Because every explanation consumes mental energy. Every justification drains emotional strength. Every discussion opens a door for doubt. Then doubt does not always destroy vision instantly. Sometimes it slowly weakens conviction. But silence preserves conviction. Conviction is what keeps you moving when motivation disappears. And motivation will disappear. But conviction stays. Now listen closely. There is a reason some things only become clear after you stop talking about them. Because talking creates emotional attachment to approval. And approval shifts your attention away from execution. You start monitoring reactions instead of results. You start adjusting words instead of adjusting work. You start managing perception instead of building reality. And that is how people lose momentum without realizing it. But silence breaks that cycle. It forces you back into direct relationship with your goal. No intermediaries, no filters, no audience, just you and what must be built, and in that space something powerful happens. You begin to notice what actually matters. You stop confusing activity with progress, confusing planning with building. You stop confusing talking with doing, and clarity sharpens. Now your actions become intentional. Your time becomes structured. Your energy becomes directed. Your focus becomes non-negotiable. Because silence eliminates emotional noise. And emotional noise is what makes people inconsistent. One day they feel motivated. Next day they feel uncertain. Then they feel inspired again. But silence replaces emotional fluctuation with disciplined consistency. And consistency is where results are born. Now hear this carefully. When God tells you to stay silent, He is not restricting your expression. He is refining your perception. Because what you see determines how you move. And what you see becomes clearer when you stop speaking prematurely. There are things you cannot fully understand while you are still explaining them. But you begin to understand them deeply when you are working on them quietly. Because silence allows reflection without interruption. Then reflection produces wisdom. Wisdom is not loud. Wisdom is precise. It does not waste energy proving itself. It simply builds correctly. And when you build correctly in silence, something powerful happens later. Your results become undeniable. You no longer need to convince anyone of your direction. Your direction speaks for itself. Because clarity always produces evidence. And evidence is louder than explanation. So understand this truth. Silence is not emptiness. It is focus purified. It is vision protected. It is clarity restored. And when clarity is restored, confusion loses authority over your life. There is a hidden battle that happens when you begin to move in silence. And it is not outside of you. It is inside of you. Because silence removes distraction, but it also removes distraction's excuse. And that is where truth becomes unavoidable. Pay attention now. When you stop talking about your goals, you cannot hide behind words anymore. You only have one thing left: action. Action reveals everything you are trying not to face. Your consistency, your discipline, your resistance, your excuses. All of it becomes visible in silence. And this is why silence feels uncomfortable for many people. Because it removes escape routes. There is no audience to impress. No conversation to delay progress. No explanation to soften responsibility. Just you and your habits. And that is where transformation either begins or breaks. Now listen carefully. Most people think progress is about doing more. But real progress is about removing what is unnecessary. And silence is the greatest remover. It removes performative effort. It removes emotional justification. It removes the need to feel ready before acting. Because in silence, readiness is no longer emotional. It becomes structural. You either do it or you don't. And that simplicity exposes everything. Now here's the deeper truth. When God tells you to focus on your goals and stay silent, He is forcing you into accountability with yourself. Not with people, with yourself. Because people can be fooled by words. But you cannot fool your own silence for long. Silence does something powerful. It stretches time. And in that stretched time, you begin to see your patterns clearly. What you repeat, what you delay, what you avoid. And avoidance becomes impossible to ignore because there is no noise to cover it. This is where growth begins. Not in excitement, not in inspiration, but in confrontation. And confrontation is not comfortable, but it is necessary. Because what you do not confront, you continue to carry. And what you carry silently becomes your limitation. Now understand this deeply. Silence is not passive. It is active discipline. It is the decision to stop escaping into explanation and start confronting execution. And that shift changes everything. Because explanation consumes energy. Execution produces results. And you cannot have both at a high level. So silence forces prioritization. It asks one question repeatedly. What are you actually doing with what you said you want? And that question becomes uncomfortable because it removes illusion. It removes the feeling of progress without real movement. It removes emotional satisfaction that was replacing real achievement. And suddenly you see yourself clearly, not who you say you are, but who you are becoming through repetition. Now listen closely. In silence, your habits start speaking louder than your intentions. Your discipline becomes your true language, not your plans, not your statements, not your promises, but your repetition. And repetition is what builds identity. This is where most people either rise or break, because silence does not reward intention. It exposes inconsistency. And inconsistency cannot survive long in silence, because silence removes distraction from the equation. And when distraction is removed, only truth remains. Now hear this carefully. There is a reason God isolates some seasons of your life. It is not to punish you. It is to reveal you. Because when no one is watching, your real foundation is revealed. And God builds from truth, not image. So silence becomes a refining fire. It burns away performance. It burns away excuses. It burns away dependency on validation until only discipline remains. And discipline is what carries destiny. Now understand this final truth of this point. You do not lose progress in silence. You lose illusions. And that is why silence feels heavy at first. Because illusions are comfortable. But comfort does not build greatness. So God removes comfort disguised as noise and replaces it with clarity disguised as silence. And in that silence, you finally meet your real self. The one who either builds or delays. The one who either executes or explains. And once you see that clearly, you can never unsee it again. There is a level of silence that most people misunderstand completely. They think silence is about hiding, but silence is actually about positioning. Because what you protect, you are preparing to present at the right time. Pay attention now. Not everything is meant to be seen in its early stage. Early exposure creates premature judgment, and premature judgment creates unnecessary resistance. But silence delays resistance until strength is formed. This is not fear. This is wisdom. Now listen carefully. When you focus on your goals in silence, you are not disappearing. You are concentrating. And concentration always looks invisible from the outside. But internally, it is extremely active. Thoughts are being refined. Habits are being corrected. Direction is being stabilized. And while the world sees nothing, you are becoming something. This is where most people fail to understand the process. They assume movement must be visible to be real. But real transformation is often hidden first, because what is visible too early can be interrupted too easily. An interruption destroys fragile progress. So silence becomes protection from interruption. Now hear this deeply. There are seasons where God will not let your progress be easily explained, because explanation invites interference. And interference delays formation. So he hides it until it becomes strong enough to stand. This is why silence is not punishment. It is preparation under divine protection. And while you are silent, something important is happening. Your focus is being tested, not by people, but by time. Because time reveals whether your commitment is real or emotional. Emotional commitment fades quickly, but real commitment grows under pressure. And silence creates pressure, not external pressure. Internal pressure, the pressure of consistency, the pressure of discipline, the pressure of showing up when no one is validating you. And this pressure refines you. It removes casual effort. It removes optional discipline. It removes when I feel like it behavior and replaces it with structure. Now listen closely. In silence, excuses lose power because excuses need an audience to survive. But when there is no one to explain things to, excuses begin to sound weak even to yourself. And that is where change begins. You stop negotiating with your potential. You stop delaying your responsibility. You stop treating your goals like suggestions. and you start treating them like direction. Clear, non-negotiable, defined. This is the shift silence produces. Now understand this carefully. God does not just bless what you want. He blesses what you sustain. And sustainability is formed in silence. Because sustaining something requires repetition without reward. It requires consistency without applause. It requires discipline without external pressure. And this is where most people collapse. Because they confuse excitement with endurance. But silence removes excitement and replaces it with endurance. Now here is the deeper truth. Silence is not the absence of progress. It is the compression of progress. Like pressure forming something stronger beneath the surface. The more consistent you are in silence, the more solid your foundation becomes. And what is solid cannot be easily shaken later. Now listen carefully. There is a reason why some people suddenly explode into success after long quiet seasons. It is not sudden. It is accumulated. Silence was not inactivity. It was accumulation of discipline, of clarity, of alignment. And when the accumulation reaches fullness, expression becomes inevitable. Because what is built in silence cannot remain hidden forever. It must eventually surface. Now understand this truth deeply. Silence is not where your story stops. It is where your story strengthens. And strength is what determines longevity. So when God says focus on your goals and stay silent, He is not asking you to disappear. He is asking you to become undeniable before you are visible. Because what is strong in silence will not break in public. And what is built quietly will stand loudly. There is a final layer of silence that changes everything. It is the point where silence is no longer something you practice. It becomes something you are. Pay attention now. At the beginning, silence feels like discipline. You force yourself to stop talking. You resist the urge to explain. You hold back what you want to announce. But at this stage, something deeper happens. Silence becomes identity. You no longer need to remind yourself to stay quiet, because speaking without purpose feels unnecessary. And this is a powerful shift. Now listen carefully. When you truly focus on your goals in silence long enough, your energy changes. You stop leaking intention. You start embodying direction. People no longer hear your plans. They begin to see your consistency. And that shift is irreversible, because words can be doubted, but evidence cannot be ignored. Now understand this deeply. Silence is not only about what you withhold from others. It is about what you protect. Within yourself, your belief becomes stronger. Your focus becomes sharper. Your discipline becomes automatic. And when discipline becomes automatic, you no longer need motivation to move. You simply move. Now here is the final confrontation. In silence, you eventually realize something uncomfortable but liberating. Nobody is coming to validate your journey early. Nobody is coming to confirm your timing. Nobody is coming to make your discipline easier. And that realization either breaks you, builds you. Because once you accept that truth, you stop waiting. You stop hesitating. You stop outsourcing responsibility for your progress. And you take full ownership. Now listen closely. This is where God's instruction becomes clear. Focus on your goals, not your distractions, not your audience, not your comparisons, your goals. And stay silent. Because silence is what protects your focus from being scattered. It protects your energy from being drained. It protects your mind from being influenced. And it protects your process from being interrupted. Now understand this final revelation. Silence is not the absence of expression. It is the presence of mastery. Because mastery does not announce itself early. It proves itself over time. And when mastery is complete, it no longer needs explanation. It becomes obvious. It becomes undeniable. It becomes authority. So hear this with full clarity. The hidden power of silence is not that it hides you. It is that it builds you into someone who no longer needs to be heard to be known. Your results will speak. Your consistency will speak. Your transformation will speak. And when they do, you will realize silence was never emptiness. It was preparation for impact. Now, this is the final truth. What is built in silence cannot be destroyed by noise. And what is formed in focus becomes unstoppable in expression. With your permission, I will now reveal the final ending. There is nothing more powerful than a life that was built in silence and revealed in strength. Because when you chose silence, you chose depth over attention. When you chose focus, you chose substance over noise. When you stayed hidden, You allowed God to shape what people could not interrupt. Now listen carefully. The world rewards what it can see, but God builds what it can sustain. And that is why your quiet season was never wasted. Every moment you were overlooked, every moment you were misunderstood, every moment you were unseen, it was not rejection, it was construction. Now understand this deeply. You are not the same person who started this journey. Silence changed you. It removed the need for validation. It removed the addiction to explanation. It removed the weakness of premature exposure. And in place of all that, it built discipline. It built clarity. It built resilience. Now you move differently. Not because you are louder, but because you are stronger. Not because you are seen more, but because you are rooted deeper. This is the final truth. What God builds in silence will never be controlled by noise. So keep your focus, keep your discipline, keep your direction, and stay silent until your results speak for you. Because when they finally do, no explanation will be needed, only recognition.